We're now going to focus on how women became leaders in the progressive movement and some of the issues they set out to change. As the country began to change, so did the role of women in society. With smaller families and lessening demands for housework, women were now free to look for new roles in society. New inventions and technology also provided women with new opportunities. For example, a vacuum cleaner allowed for cleaning to not be as time-consuming, and that spare or leisure time could now be used for other efforts. Women such as Charlotte Perkins Gilman worked to raise awareness for new opportunities for women outside of the home. All right, she was an author. You can see two of her works there, right? Stressed to women, to try and expand on their role in society. New jobs also became available to women. While some women quit their jobs when they were married, a large percentage of women between the ages of 20 and 24 were employed, right? And you can see some of the jobs: telephone operators, store clerks, and typists. Right? Now, if you were fortunate enough to have a college education, right, then you would be able to fill roles such as being a teacher and a nurse. Please pause the video at this time by hitting the space bar and answer the key question for section 1. The social reforms women took part in during the progressive period were focused on helping people. These reforms included the establishment of settlement houses and working to pass prohibition. As we have discussed in earlier lessons, Jane Addams was a famous reformer who opened Hull House in Chicago to help the unemployed, the poor, and immigrants. Interesting fact, in 1931, she was the first American woman to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Carrie A. Nation was another well-known female reformer. She worked to ban the production and sale of alcohol. She utilized dramatic methods such as her hatchet to damage saloons and was frequently arrested. With her efforts and those of the other reformers, the 18th Amendment was passed in 1919, which banned alcohol in the United States. Now, she's one of the choices that you have for your Reformers and Muckrakers Assembled project, and the interesting fact about her is the use of the hatchet. Please pause the video at this time by hitting the space bar and answering the key questions for section 2. One of the more critical reforms that female reformers worked for was women's suffrage. As you remember, the word suffrage means the right to vote, so it would be the right to vote for all women. And a lot of times the mistake we make is we look at the word suffrage and we see suffer, and we automatically assume that it means something bad. But this is the right to vote for anybody, but we're talking specifically the right to vote for women. You can see some of the pictures. Okay, women used protests and petitions to try and achieve the right to vote. The early stages of the women's suffrage movement began in the mid-1800s with the Seneca Falls Conference. You did that in 7th grade. Suffrage leaders, towards the end of the 1800s, they started to form national groups such as the National American Women's Suffrage Association, or the NAWSA, and the American Women's Suffrage Association. Right? Some of the key leaders within the suffrage movement were Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, Carrie Chapman Catt, and Alice Paul, and others worked to win the right to vote for all American women. And a lot of them are on your list to choose for your Muckrakers and Reformers project. Okay. Now, this is an interesting note, is the women's suffrage movement tried to focus on the state level first to get women the right to vote. And they were successful in the early stages, but it's going to be limited to the western part of the country. And there's going to be a map on the next slide where we can look at that in some more detail. All right, so looking at this map, you can go to the key first so we know exactly what it is that we're looking for. All right, the title here says Women's Suffrage Before Ratification of the 19th Amendment. So this is showing us who was able to vote in what states before all the women were allowed to vote in all the states. So you have 3 different colors, right? We have equal suffrage is the dark shade. That means that these women had equal rights to vote as men did. and then the year that it was granted to them. So if you're looking at this map, where do you see most of the dark shade? You see it on this side of the country. All right, some possible factors involved out there: less people, women have more of an active role in, in the home in terms of working on the farms, working within society. Right, the medium shade, that's partial women's suffrage. So there are certain opportunities that are available to women to vote, but it's not free for all women to vote, and that's going to be, for the most part, the central part of the country. And then the white area, no women's suffrage, no women were allowed to vote whatsoever. And you can see that's going to be mostly along the eastern seaboard. Now, New York is equal suffrage, and 1917 is going to be the year. That's where the Seneca Falls Convention is going to take place. So you can kind of consider that to be one of the birthplaces of the women's suffrage movement. The women's suffrage movement capitalized on U.S. entrance into World War I. By supporting President Wilson, women hoped that he would then assist them in gaining the right to vote for women. So women are going to enter the workforce when men go to fight, right? And the idea here is that they support their country. They were hoping that their country would support them in return. The passage of the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. Through methods such as protests, marches, speeches, and national organizations, women were able to obtain the right to vote. Now that was an interesting point here that President Woodrow Wilson made when he went to Congress encouraging them to approve the 19th Amendment. He felt that giving women the right to vote was vital to winning the war. One thing we'll look at as we progress through the rest of the year when we start getting into World War II, the Vietnam War, is that it's very difficult for a country to focus on a foreign conflict if there are any conflicts or turmoil going on in the home country or on the home front. Right, so Wilson was very much behind trying to give women the right to vote. Right, and then 1920 is when it's ratified by all of the states, right, and becomes an official law. Women were now granted the right to vote thanks to the efforts of these reformers. Please pause the video at this time by hitting the space bar and answer the key question for section 3.